I have always honored the younger over the older in my life. Anyway, I was told today to be brief and funny, so under my robe, I'm wearing my briefs. Thanks. I'm often asked what my proudest moment was in my life. And I'd answer, it's my graduation from Cal. And we say, my school, right or wrong. My team, right or wrong. Eventually we'll say, my country, right or wrong. But we really should question such things and not just accept them. We should always challenge to be better. There was a time when I had two of my kids at the University of Colorado when it got into the Pac-8, and we watched Berkeley demolish their basketball team, and then we went to a game at Stanford versus Colorado, and Janet and I, they spotted us. They spotted us, and they put us in the front row of the arena, in the athletic director's box, the front row, and we're dressed in Berkeley colors, rooting for Colorado at Stanford. Graduation represents a huge stream of effort you put into tests and studying and courses, and it represents your brain. So my graduation here represented that. But now I also have a proudest moment that comes from the heart. I got to walk my daughter down the aisle. I had wanted to for so long, and wanting is even more important than knowledge sometimes. Corey Hall, I guess there's a lot of people named Hall that went here. Corey Hall taught me a lot about computers. Tolman Hall taught me a lot about people. Norton Hall, the dorm, 110 Norton Hall taught me how you could do unusual things and be an outsider and still have a lot of fun and progress. And you know, this school is well acknowledged for engineering. I'm proud of that. My wife went to a small school in Kansas whose reputation is addicting substances. The founder of Panda Express went there to the same school, and that's addicting. So I grew up outside the normal people, outside the normal socialization in school, you know, but I was very lucky to be a good student, to have a brain. And it assured me of a life ahead, you know, despite being too shy to even talk to people, scared to talk to them. I couldn't speak their speak. And shyness lets you do a lot of things on your own. It helped me think different. It helped me think outside of the box. I didn't have to be doing the same things as other people since I didn't interact with them, too scared of conflict. And other people in our school might say, what's his problem? And another might answer, well, he's an electronic genius. So, whew, I had that going for me. And, you know, I even went down to the library in Sunnyvale and read books on psychology to figure out what I had that was wrong. And no, it turned out I was just fine. I just daydream a lot. That's the closest I have to any psychology thing. And my night dreams, I'd go to sleep at night in those days, and even college days, thinking about a deep problem in school, in mathematics maybe, in computers. And I'd come up with the answers sometimes at midnight, wake up in the middle, dreaming the answers. When college time came, of course, I had excellent grades, and I'd won my school math awards, and I had 800 SAT and scores in math and sciences, and I had taught myself to design computers when it was impossible. There were no books, no classes, no computers around, and I just stumbled into little bits of information. It was my life's goal. So I was totally self-taught, and being self-taught about things, when you discover something, you get interested, you go teach yourself, and it's not for a class. It's not to be graded with everyone else. That's where you learn it the best. Where to apply? And Cal was logical. I was a shoe-in for Cal and UC, and it was logical, and it was easy, and it was efficient. But, and not only that, a movie came out my last year of high school, The Graduate, and Cal had a role in it. I would drive by the campus and think about wanting it. But my first flight ever outside of California was with a couple of friends to Colorado, and it snowed that day. I had never seen snow in my life. Oh my gosh, tromping around in it. CU Boulder was the only school I would apply to, and my parents said okay. You know, I could follow my heart and I've taken that into account ever since. I was glad for the parents that did that. My parents did say they only had money for 1 year of expensive out-of-state tuition that Colorado has. So 1 year was all I would get. And the Introduction to Computers course was a graduate course. But I was allowed to take it because I was in engineering as a freshman, and I got an A+. And I wrote all these programs that were so good that scientists and engineers wanted to use, useful courses. And I didn't realize it. I ran our class 5 times over some budget. I thought you were in class and you could write all the programs you wanted. They should have praised my intellect, but instead they accused me of wrongdoing. That happened in other occasions in my life when I was doing some great things. That year, of course, you want to have fun. You don't want to be only productive going to classes. Oh my gosh, I knew electronics. I'd been a ham radio operator since 10 years old. I knew how to build transmitters. So I built a TV jammer, and I'd turn it on, and I could blacken every TV in our dorm. And then there was one color TV on campus. It was over in the basement of a girls' dorm, and I'd go over there and turn up my jammer, and it didn't blacken the TV, it fuzzed it up, and a friend of mine would whack the TV, and it would go good. I'd make it go good. And then a little later, it'd go bad, and he'd whack it harder and harder. And it got to where for weeks they stationed one student in a chair next to the TV with the job to fix it by tuning controls and everything. And I started playing with their body positions. Got them to stand on a chair, got them to hold a hand in the middle of the TV to watch the last half of a Mission Impossible. You know, it came time thinking about what am I going to be in life? You know, many of you are here now, and I said, I want to be good and I want to be liked. But I was, unable to talk to people. But I decided that honesty was the most important thing. You're honest. If you're even doing something bad, you'll at least be honest with it with your, those that are close to you. So when I was at Berkeley, building little devices that made free phone calls, I told my parents, and they said, just don't do it in our house. So I did it in the dorm. And I came up with formulas thinking, what's important? I read a book about a guy that was buying and selling $500 million companies in today's dollars. Sumner Redstone was his name. And I thought, would I want to be that person with that much power? And I said, and I laughed about the TV jammer, and I said, no, I'd rather be the guy that goes to my death just laughing and smiling. I want to be that. And I said, life is not about accomplishment, it's about happiness. And my formula for happiness, thank you, because this was the best thing I ever did in my life, much more important than Apple. But my formula was happiness is feelings, smilings and laughter, minus frowns and being upset at things. So, of course, I found ways to have a lot of laughter. I loved music. It was magic drops of love in the air to me, and a lot of the lyrics, were guides to my own personal philosophy in life. I would say, like, for example, how you avoid frowns. First of all, I'd say don't argue. You might not agree with somebody, but you have a good brain, and they have a brain that comes to their answers. And so, but I didn't want to be judgmental. I didn't want to have to take sides against people and have conflict. And I would look to, like, in a song, it said, there ain't no good guy, there ain't no bad guy, there's only you and me, and we just disagree. You can apply that to a lot of things in life. Yeah, you don't have to make everything an argument and have enemies and all. So I became non-political. Vietnam War played a part in that. I don't have time to get into what influenced me then. But politics, I couldn't believe that I could ever vote for anyone, and it would really change my life. How good of a home do I have? So I would never vote. And I never voted in my life for president until the last election I did. And I didn't have any direct religion in my life. Of course, I explored it in early college years. Explored religion, but I decided religion was about being a good person. And my God, I knew I had a brain. I could make myself a good person. So my God is a little part of my brain. And I came up with a lot of things that sound like religion, like if somebody's bad to me, I'm good to them. That's an important concept in life. And how do you be good? First of all, don't force your values on other people, even your own children. Let them grow up like I did, free to meet their friends and choose their ways in life and their own values. My daughter, Sarah, her college decision came. She was an A+ student, all the way, national athlete. Schools from across the country sent recruiters to recruit her to our house. And she was accepted by Ivy League schools at the top of her list. And then athletic schools like Florida. And then University of Colorado, because I spoke of it highly. And then Northern California schools, including Cal. And the bottom of her list, Southern California schools, UCLA and USC. UCLA is a sister school. It's not a rival like Stanford. And anyway, I just told her, I said I was so glad about her great college acceptances. And I told her I was a little surprised the Southern California schools were at the bottom of her list, because college is the most fun 4 years of your life. And you want to be among people you'll have fun with, people with similar personalities. And I told Sarah that she had a Southern California personality. So I was just surprised it was the bottom of her list. I didn't try to influence her. A week later, she chose UCLA, and it was the right decision forever for her. But she definitely is a fan of Cal. Yay, go Bears. Go Oski. So I built a cream soda computer, I called it, in 1970, 5 years before Apple would start. And around the time Apple started, a bunch of other people were trying to build little small affordable pieces of equipment they called computers that were the same thing I built 5 years before. No, I wanted them to become much more human. And then I met Steve Jobs around that time. And Steve Jobs valued my technical knowledge and abilities. A lot of that coming from Berkeley. And anybody who appreciated me and understood me was my best friend forever, because I had no way to make friends, really. So we became great friends. And I took, the day I met Steve Jobs, and he's thinking about where we go in life, I took him to my home. And he was 16 years old and didn't have any albums. He didn't have any money. And I showed him the Bob Dylan albums. I showed him strange interviews and liner notes, the lyrics to unbelievable songs. So it became a big part of our lives. Dylan music, seeking memorabilia. What were those songs talking about to a person looking for a life? One time there was a computer introduced, the Nova 4K computer, and I told my dad I would own a 4K Nova computer someday. I was young, but I had posters in my bedroom in high school of computers. And there were no computers back then. My dad said that a Nova 4K would cost as much as a house. I said, I'll live in an apartment. I threw down the gauntlet. Forever, you put some things deep in your soul that you say, I want to do a certain thing someday. I want to be a certain thing. And it just stays with you for life. It just doesn't go away. So it was in my heart and stayed there. Now, my third college year was at Cal. And I just took grad level courses in hardware and software design. And there was a girl writing a paper for a psych class, and she wanted an unusual person, an abnormal person. So I got to talk to a girl about a report she was doing. First girl I ever talked to, gave me a chance at a normal life, one of my strongest Berkeley memories. I grew up loving typing. We would type, a lot of girls in high school wanted to be typing secretaries someday, it was called, when I was in high school. And I was faster in typing too than all the girls. But I learned to type so fast for computers, terminals. And at Cal, I would actually meet other people. I didn't know them. They don't know me. They don't know my name. To this day, they wouldn't know it was I. But I would type a term paper for them, just loving the typing from midnight until 6 a.m. Cursive written notes, retyping them, taken in class, retyping them into a term paper. And I would charge 5 cents. 5 cents was much better. If I did it for free, it would just be for a friend. But I didn't know these people. I just enjoyed doing it. And that's, so some things you can do because you enjoy it and you don't have to have money for it. I got a job early on after 3 years of college with no college degree at Hewlett-Packard, designing the hottest extreme products of the world at the time. Some handheld scientific calculators for engineers and physicists. And I determined that at that company, it was such great values, I would be an engineer for life at Hewlett-Packard, Never move up the org chart because it gets a little political-like. And one time, a club started, and it was called the Homebrew Computer Club. And there were many from Berkeley and from Stanford professors speaking about the life change we'd have once we had our own computers, our own computing devices, how much more a human can do with technology. And I designed my first computer, a great computer. You could type on a keyboard with a video display. Every computer before it had ugly buttons and switches and lights and everything, nothing anywhere near human. This was like a typewriter. It was so far ahead of what anyone else was doing, but people were looking over my shoulder. I gave it away. I gave it away for free, open source, public domain, no copyright notices, and other people in this club built my computer. And the keyboard TV approach changed the world. Now, Steve Jobs came into town. About once a year, he'd come into town, and whatever I had invented lately, he'd turn it into money. And there's a movie with Ashton Kutcher as Steve Jobs come finding me in a basement with a computer and taking me down to a club. Steve had never been to the club. He didn't know I built the computer. I'd been to the club every day since it started. So there's things get changed in life from the truth. And I brought him to the club to see the excitement. And that's when he said we should start a company. And of course, I wanted to be an engineer for life at Hewlett Packard. I wouldn't risk my job. So I proposed the personal computer to Hewlett Packard, and they turned me down for the first of 5 times. All the big computer companies said this was going to be nothing. Yeah. So Steve and I started a company, and we had a goal. We wanted to help the disabled. We thought technology could help the disabled, that someday blind people and sighted people could be more equal. And look how much we've succeeded. Everywhere you go, just look at the sidewalk. People are walking around looking at their as blind as could be. Anyway, my goal, I got to admit this, was not to start an industry. It was not to start a company. It was so that other engineers with minds like those from Berkeley could look over my shoulder and see what I had created and respect me as an engineer and say, whoa, how did he think of those things? Just sometimes magic pours out of your head. Well, turns out that a computer I built was going to be all of the profits of Apple, the only profitable product for the first 10 years of the company. What made Apple? And it was, Apple's now larger than the GDP of Great Britain and almost any stock exchange. And it was my Apple II computer that did that. The games were always important. Pong taught me a TV can be an output device. And I also designed a game called Breakout for Atari, lots of other games. And what I was doing was I was designing I got a reputation, an engineer, a young engineer at Hewlett Packard, designing products for people around California mainly, like the first hotel movie systems and other, TV encoding algorithms. And I got this reputation. I always charged 5 cents. So, and I would do incredible digital designs. But I had built a terminal. I wanted to be part of the interesting things in the world. The ARPANET had been created. 6 universities in the United States. Okay, 6 universities. Now it's the internet with billions of connections. And I had a job, but I was young. I had a lot of time for my own things. So I built a terminal that could call the ARPANET. Had to be a part of it. Anyway, fortunately, I came up with an idea for color. I was down to Atari and I said, wouldn't these games be beautiful if they were in color? Because they were black and white. And I was a television engineer too, and I knew how to design color with differential calculus and high-level math. And no, I thought of an idea to do it with digital, with a number from a computer that a TV would think was color, even though it violated everything in any book. And that was for free. And that's what gave us a 6-color logo for Apple when we started the company. Nobody else was going to be able to do that. Anyway, I went back to Berkeley after a plane crash. Yes, a plane crash. 10 years later, I called up Steve Jobs and said, this is my last chance to get my college degree, my last year. And I wanted my kids that I would have someday to know I went to a college and I graduated from it. And the name on my Berkeley diploma is the name I used here, because my name was famous by then, Rocky Raccoon Clark. That's on my diploma. So anyway, but I came back as a psych major. I wanted to study the brain. I wanted to study, memories and things like that, and unusual thinkings. I came up with a stronger statement than in any book about where a memory might be. How do you read a memory in a person's brain? We don't know. You go in and analyze some synapses and say, oh, that's the word corn. Not gonna be. Nothing said where a memory was in the brain, that it was in the brain even. And I came up with an observation. You lose two things between the ages of 6 and 10, your childhood, autobiographic memories, and your teeth. There's this idea, could we make a brain if we don't really know how it's wired? Could we make a brain like an engineer? And I was at a company where the engineers figured out how to make a brain. It takes 9 months. Got into experimental research, very heavy in mathematics. Inferential statistics makes no sense to people who think they know normal statistics, descriptive statistics. And I got in there and I was tutoring a student for 5 cents a session, but she needed simplified mathematics. So I looked at it and worked on the formulas that were not understandable by any human, and I came up with a totally different one from the books. And it was poetic and understandable and instructive, and that the critical number that said, did your experiment work or not, the critical variable I came up with could be, if you took each of the groups by age and gender and ethnicity differentials, took each of them, got a standard deviation and a mean for each one on your calculator, you could take the critical variable was the standard deviation of the means divided by the mean of the standard deviations. So poetic and understandable. You still had to multiply by the square root of n. Anyway, always have fun with numbers. I'm just giving one example. You can always have fun with numbers. For example, my age is 72. I like to tell people it's a palindrome. 72 is the same backwards and forwards. You're saying, what? In mathematically, 72, 3 times 8 times 3. Backwards and forwards the same. 3 times 8 times, or more poetically, 2 times 3 times 2 times 3 times 2. It's also 2 to the third times 3 to the second. I don't know what I'm going to do when I have a birthday now. Always look for ways to make life fun. Be inspired. Use your brains. Think for yourselves. Be leaders, not followers, doing everything everyone else is doing in a crowd. Inspire others yourself. Know that you are good for the world. Know who you are, and don't let that be changed even by success in your life. Strive for excellence. Try to be the best in the world. That's a good thing for Cal. Be gracious, whether you win or lose. Life is not a dress rehearsal. You are living it. It's not a dress rehearsal. Help others that are younger. Help others that are less experienced. Be mentors, be teachers. Someday, you may find you have no energy left to keep on giving. You can be thankful that you used everything you were given for this life. As you depart today, realize that time only moves in one direction.